Hi, this is Bobby, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm excited today to have with me Judge Cubbage out of Greensboro. I'm glad to have you here today.
Glad to be here, Sheriff.
No, the pleasure's mine. So, a lot of times what we do is when we have guests here, a lot of times a lot of people know the guests, some they don't. So I'd just like you to tell us about yourself. Tell us, how did you end up being the judge? How did you end up going to law school? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I moved to Greensboro in 92, ended up going to Barber school over here in Winston. And from there, I cut hair for the next 17 years after Barber school. And when I was in the barber shop, of course, I kept hearing stories from my clients about having interactions with the justice system. And they just didn't feel like they had got a fair shot. So I kept saying, the more I kept hearing the stories, the more compelled I was to try to do something. And so finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to college, and then I'm going to law school. So I'd built up my clientele to the point where they supported me through college and law school. I started taking appointments, went over to A&T, and then went down to UNC Chapel Hill for law school. Started out as a DA and then Attorney General's office, and then I ran for district court judge and won, and now I'm serving as a Superior Court judge.
That's amazing. So that says a lot about you. That's determination. So you say you moved here. Where are you originally from?
The Shenandoah Valley, Shenandoah, Virginia.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. So what was that like, making up your mind, saying, you know what, I'm going to change professions altogether. I'm going to move. I'm going to go back to school. You said 17 years later?
Yeah. So it was scary. When I moved to Greensboro, I was following my twin sister, who is now back in Shenandoah.
So you got a twin?
Yes, I have an identical twin. So she was here. I had never been separated from her. So I decided I wanted to come to Greensboro where she was. But it was scary because I was a single mother. I have one child, and she was a teenager then. And so I was like, how am I going to make ends meet? Because I had grown a successful barbering business. But I just could not. The more and more I heard the stories, I just like, something is not right here. And so, hey, I said I'm going to apply to A&T, and I got in. And for the next 7 years of A&T and law school, me and my daughter lived off of oodles and noodles and law school work.
Wow, that's strong.
Yeah.
That's very strong. So, you said you had heard so many horror stories about the justice system. And now that you sit high and you look, do you still feel the same way?
About the needs and concerns?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. But what I have found when I started as a DA and have come through is most people just want a chance to be heard. They really do just want the opportunity for someone to hear their story, whether it's the DA or the judge. And even when things don't turn out the way they would like them to, as long as they feel like they've got a fair shot and an opportunity to be heard, they're often okay with it. I've had plenty of folks that I've had to incarcerate that will walk out and say, thank you, Judge.
Wow. So when you were ADA, right?
Yes.
Assistant District Attorney. So when you were ADA, how did you feel trying cases and sending people to jail? Did you feel any kind of way, hesitation, reservation?
Well,
or you looked at it as business as usual, just a job?
I never look at my job as it's just a job or it's business, because we're taking away people's liberties. But when it called for it from the DA, even now as a judge, I'm an explanatory jurist. And so I often explain, or always try to explain, this is why I'm asking as a DA, this is why I'm going to ask for jail time. And even as a judge, this is why I'm incarcerating you, and this is why I'm going in this range of sentencing. And again, most people don't mind being held accountable as long as you still treat them like they're human beings.
Right.
As long as you still treat them like they are human beings and they understand the process, they tend to be okay with it.
Wow.
Not like they're saying, hey, lock me up.
So,
but they understand it.
As a judge and as a female judge, you're a Superior Court judge, right?
Yes.
Wow. So when you sit there and you sending people away for lots of years, does it affect you?
Oh, gosh, yes. I think when you are not affected, it's probably
time. And as a mother, that's probably difficult too. As a mother, you sit and you see things and you realize that sometimes people got here through the environment, they're products of the environment they've been geared and raised in. How does that affect you?
It's a lot of sleepless nights, to be honest. And, you're taken away for the most part. Well, our girls now are coming into the system almost as much as our young men.
Wow.
But you're taking away somebody's child. You're taking away a future. I go back to a case where I had to sentence a 19-year-old for murder. And that's probably the most notable case that people will, I was crying on the bench. And there are some people that commended me for still having feelings. And then there were some people that said I was a weak judge. Well, I didn't look at it like I was a weak judge. I looked at it as exactly like what I said. There was a 16-year-old that was buried, and there was a 19-year-old that I was sending to jail for 24 years. 2 lives lost. The world stops for him at 19. So when he comes out 24 years later, it's a total different world when you're talking about skill set, marketplace, his knowledge of, how to survive becomes jaded, different. He's learned how to survive in a jail cell for 24 years.
Wow. And
the real world is going to be completely different. So, did I just take somebody's whole life away? And then I have to remember that, I have to go by the facts before me, the constitutional rights, the rule of law, and the demands of justice.
So how long have you been sitting on the bench?
This is my 4th year.
4th year. Wow. So let me ask you a question. So I guess when we take the gloves off, we're in the middle of this pandemic. I say we're in the middle of 2 pandemics. We're in the pandemic of COVID-19 and the pandemic of social unrest that we have happening here and throughout the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about what you're seeing in terms of the social unrest? As a female and as a woman of color, how do you feel? What do you see?
It's what I hear more so than what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have got to look past what we see, and we've got to hear the cries. For far too long, people have thought that there are 2 justice systems. And my grandmother used to say, everybody can't be saying the same thing and everybody's lying.
Mm.
So if we're in the justice system, we've got to see that. We've got to hear these cries.
So sitting high, do you think there are 2 justice systems? From where you sit, I mean, if anybody would know if there are 2 justice systems, nobody would know better than a Superior Court judge.
I think that there are for a lot of people. I wish that there wasn't. But, there are.
Truth is the truth.
The truth is the truth. If you have economic means, things tend to come out a little different than those without economic means. And we've got to take a closer look at that. We've got to be willing to acknowledge and accept our responsibility and the role that we play in it.
I love the statement that you just made because that says a lot about you. I knew the answer to the question I was asking you. There are 2 systems. And I applaud you for speaking truth and saying, that who you are, your ability to financial ability affects a lot of terms in terms of who you can afford to hire and a lot of other things. So for you to say that speaks volume of your character. It shows that, to me, it shows that you're a truth teller. And I think that's what we need in people who are in leadership and sit high on the bench, is to have the ability to see that while we're not perfect as a system,
right,
there's room for growth. There's room for us to be better than we are and better than we were. And only get better than you were and better than you are is to have the ability to say there's some work to be done. So for you to say that speaks volume for you. You're running in Guilford County, right?
I'm running statewide.
Statewide.
Yes. So I'm running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals for seat number 5. That is a statewide race. So
wow.
I'm all over North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely wish you much success because we need people that realize that we can be better.
Oh, yes.
We need people that realize that that has compassion. You told a story about shedding tears. That shows that you're compassionate, that you are, in spite of being a judge, in spite of being an ADA, in spite of being a barber, in spite of being a mother, all those things, you are a human being. You are a woman of compassion. And that says a lot about you. I want to back up for a minute. So there's a lot of people that are going to watch this and say, she was a barber?
Yes,
she went back to school 17 years later?
Yes, she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was all because you saw something that you wanted to fix. In other words, you saw something that, I say this all the time, and I've heard this all my life, is that in order to affect the game, you got to get in the game.
That's right.
Right. And so you saw that something wasn't right in the game, so you didn't sit on the sideline and become a cheerleader and throw rocks at it. You decided, hey, I'm going to be a part of the change. That says a lot about you. Yeah.
My grandmother used to always tell us, don't complain about the things that you can change. And you may not be able to change everything, but change what you can.
Wow.
And so I thought, I may not be able to fix a broken system, but I certainly can make an indent in it. But like you said, by getting in the game, I can't just sit here and keep listening and feeling compelled and never do anything. So,
So you went to Chapel Hill
I did.
Law School?
Yes.
So, I tell this story in close corners and close circles that several years ago, I had this idea that I wanted to go to law school. It was on my bucket list, right? I had a few things on my bucket list, right? And so I decided that I was going to set an LSAT profile, took the LSAT over at UNCG one Saturday morning. I did all right. I didn't set no records or nothing. I did all right. And so, Central had this program where you come and they decide if you're going to be accepted in their program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go down there and, of course, I was there for about couple weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before they told me I probably should go home and rethink this, right? Torts and adverse properties, all that came so quick. But I think that had I been in a different place in my life, I was working full time and doing a lot of other things. So I have a lot of respect for people that go back and accomplish the things that they say they want to go. That's on my bucket list. Maybe a couple of years from now, I may go back, try to.
Why not?
I hate to start something and not finish it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got other things on my list now, but I applaud you for having the tenacity and the perseverance to go back and say, hey, I'm going to be a part of the system. So now that you're running statewide and you're running for this position, what's driving you to do that? My dad said, tells me where a man spends his time, his money, I can tell you what he loves. What's driving you? There's a why. All of us have a why you do this. Why do you do this? I do what I do for the love. I love being a servant. I love serving people. What's your why?
I absolutely do love being a servant, but legacy.
Mm-hmm.
We have got to show our youth that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be a lawyer. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to be a judge. All you have to have is drive and determination. Be willing to,
have a little aptitude, though.
Well, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little more than obviously Sheriff Kimbrough had when he went down to Central.
Throwing rocks on us.
I'm just saying. Not much more, though. But I want to leave. I always say when I am speaking somewhere, I'm not here to impress. I'm here to impact.
I like that.
I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, 29-year-old daughter. What is it that I want them to believe that they can do? I want them to believe that they can do whatever it is that they want to do, but you have to do it with a purpose. What is it that you want to leave behind? I want people to say that Judge Cubbage, when she was on the bench and she was in public service, that she did the very best that she could do. And that is my why. At the Court of Appeals,
So what do they do at the Court of Appeals? I know, but there's people out there that say, what do they do? So at the Court of Appeals, what do they do?
They review cases based on what the lower court judge did wrong. They don't hear witnesses. They don't review cases based on the facts. Is error of law and error of procedure. What did the trial court judge do? 80% of those cases that goes to the Court of Appeals will be criminal cases. We all know that 80% of our criminal cases have African-American defendants. There's two African-Americans to sit on the Court of Appeals. I'm running for my mentor seat, Judge Wanda Bryant. So when she retires in December, but for me getting elected to her seat, there will be no African-American women on a 15-seat judiciary. If Judge Young keeps his seat, he will be the only African-American man. Now, the legal reasoning is not going to change. The law is not going to change, but the perspective. If there is no African-American sitting on the bench, there's no African American perspective. A lot of people will think that, let's take, for instance, somebody went in the store and stole something. The law says you're not supposed to. They had a choice. A lot of folks don't have a choice. And me going to law school as a single mother who had to take appointments and had to eat oodles and noodles for 3 years, there's sometimes not a choice of whether you're going in the store and pick up that package of oodles and noodles for your children.
It's out of necessity.
Or not. Sometimes it's necessity. And if you've never come from that situation, it's hard for you to imagine that is a situation. But it is a situation. So it won't change whether it's right or wrong in the law, but it will change the perspective. And it's a unique perspective that only I can bring.
I like that. So let me ask you a question. So when you look back over your life, right, we all have defining moments in our life. What do you think the defining moment in your life was that said, hey, I've got to do something? So when I look at my life, my defining moment was, just for an example, just to give you where I'm going with this, was a tragic time in my life that caused me to look at my life and reinvent myself and realize it's time for me to do something different. It defined who I was going forward. That defining moment in my life.
I think the defining moment for me was the year that I decided that I was going to go to law school. My grandmother passed away. I was supposed to go to Central. I had sent back my money for Central and Carolina. And the day that my grandmother was buried, the next day my mother got diagnosed with lung cancer. Now, she's been in remission for years and years and years, but it was, what were they leaving for me, and what did I want to leave for somebody else? And my grandmother had things she wanted to accomplish that she did not. My mother has things she wanted to accomplish that she had not at that point. And my grandmother would always tell us, if the good Lord lets you live and you look back, what do you want to say you did in those years? And so I called Central and I called Carolina and told them I'm not going to be able to enter. I was supposed to go to school in 2002. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be able to enter. My mother has lung cancer and I need to be able to travel to Virginia, and that's a 4-hour one-way trip. Central told me I'd have to start all over. Carolina told me, we'll hold your place for a year. And so I went to Carolina in 2003 and always said, and always use as my motto, if the Lord lets you live another day, what do you want to look back and say you did?
Wow. So as we wrap up and kind of come to a close, tell me something. What would you like to say, or what would you like to tell the people that are watching and listening about you? What is it that you would like the people to know? I always give the example that I always look at is that I used to spend a lot of time in the cemetery. I used to love to go to the cemetery and I look at the headstones, birth date, exit dates. All of us know our birth date. None of us know our exit date. And, I used to go and I used to see my headstone and I would say to myself, I see my birth date, but I don't know the exit date. And I would ask myself, the question is, I guess the birth date's really not that important, nor is the exit date. The question is how you live in between the hyphen. Mm-hmm. So my thing is, what will my legacy be? What will the indelible footprint I leave behind? What will they say that, okay, Bobby Kimbrough was here. What did he do? So if you had to share with us who you are, what do you hope to accomplish, and what do you hope to be remembered by, what would you tell the people?
I would say on a personal level, I hope to always be remembered by being someone that's down to earth, that's humble and accessible. On a professional level, I'd love to leave the legacy that she did the best that she could, and she did right by those that came before her. For me, it's about laying down at night and being able to go to sleep with your conscience, not promoting someone else's agenda, not fighting the battles that someone else wants you to fight, and doing people wrong in the process. But you can be in an elected position, you can have a title, and you don't have to, the title does not have to have you. And so as long as I am doing what I feel like God has purpose for me to do, I can always say what my uncle, who was our family preacher, used to always say, may the work I've done speak for me.
Speak for me. Yeah, that's strong. That's strong. I just had another question pop up in my mind when you were talking. You know, there's a lot of things happening in our society. A lot of things happening in our community. As a judge, what do you think the number one problem or the thing that we need to give attention to, the thing that we need to say, we need to fix this? Because you see a lot of different cases, I'm sure, a plethora of them. What do you think there is something that, as a society, that concerns you from where you sit? Like from where I sit every day, I see that we have a population, we have issues in our communities, that social issues that end up being criminal issues. If we address them from a social side, the likelihood of them become criminal issues get smaller.
I agree. I think for me it goes back to the social unrest and the social cries that we need to hear. Do we see the protests? We do. Did we see the looting and rioting? We did. But what I heard was a community of people, not just black, but now we have black, white, red, and blue, all joining together and saying, look at me, and just think that I deserve what you think you deserve if I'm willing to work for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's all people really, really, really want. You know, stop. The systemic things are there, and we've got to acknowledge that, but they don't have to be. And so when we don't address those in society, mm-hmm. I will address them on the bench. That's a guarantee.
I like that. You know, that brings us to a closing point, that we're stronger together than we ever could imagine if we realize that, you know, when you look at the rainbow, you can't just pick one color out of the rainbow and say that color is purely. It's the collage of colors coming together to make the rainbow beautiful.
And it's our differences that bind us.
Exactly, and make us great. It's diversity that brings us. I want you to know I've enjoyed this conversation with you. I wish you much success, especially in the upcoming election. If we can do anything for you here, always stop by. You have a friend over here in Forsyth County. Thank you for stopping by, and we wish you much success.
Thank you, Sheriff Kimbrough. I appreciate it.